Good evening, dear listener. Before we begin tonight's journey, take a quiet moment to settle in. Let the weight of the day slowly drift away, like mist dissolving beneath the pale light of the moon. Somewhere beyond the noise of the waking world, there is a place where stories still wander through ancient forests, where old castles rest beneath silver starlight, and where time moves gently as if the night itself were breathing. Tonight, we will travel there together, through forgotten paths and quiet kingdoms, through whispers of magic, wandering princes and enchanted creatures, through the soft and timeless fairy tales that have carried dreamers to sleep for centuries. So allow your thoughts to grow calm. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. And let the quiet rhythm of this story guide you further and further away from the busy world. There is nowhere you must go. Nothing you must do. Simply listen and allow the gentle flow of this tale to carry you softly towards sleep. The Frog King, or Iron Henry. In ancient days when wishing still bore fruit and hearts clung to hope as though it were a treasure, there lived a king of vast renown. His daughters were fair beyond compare, each as bright as dawn upon a meadow. Yet the youngest outshone them all. So radiant was she that the very sun who had looked upon countless wonders since time began paused in his journey each morning and marveled anew at her beauty. Near the king's castle stretched a great and shadow-laden forest, thick with moss and mystery. Deep within, beneath the ancient branches of a linden tree, gnarled with age, there lay a cool, clear well. In the heat of summer days, the youngest princess would wander into this wood, sit upon the grassy brink of the well, and refresh her spirit. To pass the long hours she carried with her a toy more precious than pearls, a golden ball wrought so perfectly that it gleamed like the sun itself. Often she would toss it high into the air, catching it deftly in her small white hands. This play became her solace and her joy. One day, as fate had marked, the golden ball slipped from her grasp. It fell not back into her hand, but struck. The earth rolled upon the moss and tumbled straight into the dark mouth of the well. The princess bent forward, straining her eyes, but the water's depth was endless, its bottom lost in shadow. Her treasure was gone. A flood of grief overcame her, and she wept bitterly, her sobs echoing through the trees. Amidst her tears came a voice strange and hollow, yet plain. What ails thee, king's daughter? Thy sorrow could soften stone. She lifted her head in fright and beheld, half hidden by rippling water, the blunt green head of a frog. His eyes bulged, and his throat swelled as he spoke. "O thou old croaker," said she, "I weep for my golden ball, my dearest plaything that has fallen into the well. Cease thy weeping," croaked the frog. "I can fetch thy ball. But tell me, what wilt thou give me if I return it? Anything thou desirest." "Dear frog," she said hastily, "my silken gowns, my strings of pearls, my jewels bright, even the crown of gold that rests upon my head." The frog shook his damp head. "Thy gowns, thy jewels, and thy crown are naught to me. But if thou wilt love me, let me sit beside thee as companion, eat from thy plate, drink from thy cup, and sleep in thy little bed. If thou wilt promise me all this, then shall I dive below and bring thee thy golden ball." "Yes, yes," cried the princess. "I promise it all. Whatever thou wilt, only bring me back my ball." Yet in her heart she thought, "What folly! He is but a frog, fit only to croak and splash in the mud. He could never be my companion." The frog, content with her word, slipped beneath the water. Soon he rose again, bearing the golden ball in his wide mouth. He spat it upon the grass at her feet. With a cry of joy, the princess snatched up her toy and fled, her laughter ringing through the wood. "Wait, take me with thee," croaked the frog, leaping after her. "I cannot run as fast as thou." But she heeded him not. His croaks followed her like curses, yet she hurried on until she reached the safety of the castle, and there she thought no more of the poor frog. The next evening, as she supped with her father, the king and all the court there, came a sound, plip, plap, upon the marble stairs, slow and dreadful. Then a knock upon the heavy door, and a voice cried, "King's youngest daughter, open to me. By the cool well's water, what promised thou me? King's youngest daughter, now open to me." The princess grew pale, and her heart beat fast. She ran to the door and opened it, but a crack. There upon the threshold sat the frog, his skin glistening, his eyes fixed upon her. She shrieked and slammed the door shut. The king, perceiving her distress, asked gently, "What frightens thee, child? Hast thou seen a giant come to steal thee away?" "No giant, father," she whispered, trembling, "but a hideous frog. Yesterday, as I sat by the well, he fetched my golden ball for me, on condition I let him be my companion. I never thought he could leave the water, but now he is here at the door, demanding entrance." Again they heard the knock. Again the rhyme was spoken. The king's brow grew stern. "What thou hast promised, that must thou keep. Go open the door." Shaking, she obeyed. The frog hopped across the floor, pattering after her, until she sank into her chair. "Lift me up beside thee," he croaked. She hesitated, but the king's command was law. So she placed him upon the chair. Then he said, "Bring thy golden plate nearer, that we may eat together." With loathing she did so, though every morsel she swallowed was bitter as gall, while the frog ate with relish. When the feast was done, he spoke once more, "I am weary. Take me to thy chamber. Prepare thy silken bed, that we may sleep side by side." At this demand, her tears flowed anew. She dreaded the slimy touch of his cold body. But the king's voice thundered, "That which thou hast vowed in thy time of need, must thou fulfill." So with 2 fingers she grasped the frog, carried him upstairs, and set him in a dark corner. Yet scarcely had she lain down when he crept toward her bed. "I am tired as thou art. Take me up, or I shall tell thy father." Then anger mastered her. She seized the frog and flung him with all her might against the wall, crying, "Be still forever, thou horrid creature." But when he struck the wall, a marvel occurred. No frog lay there, but a prince, noble and comely, his eyes gentle and bright. The spell was broken. By her hand alone had he been freed. With her father's blessing, they were betrothed that very night. He told her of the wicked witch who had bound him in the frog's shape, and how only her promise, harshly kept, could restore him. Then came to the castle a carriage drawn by 8 white steeds, their plumes like snow, their harness gleaming gold. Behind it stood faithful Henry, the prince's servant. Now Henry had borne such grief during his master's enchantment that 3 iron bands were clasped about his heart, lest it break from sorrow. When he saw his lord free, once more joy swelled within him, and as the carriage rattled down the road, there came a loud crack. "My master, the wheel is breaking," he cried in fear. But the prince answered, "No wheel breaks, 'tis the band round thy heart, that once I was lost, bound fast with grief's art. Now love has made it part." Twice again the sound was heard, and each time it was not the wheel, but the bands bursting asunder. For Henry's heart was too full of gladness to be bound any longer. Thus the prince, his bride, and faithful Henry rode forth in triumph, never again to part. The 2 brothers. There were once upon a time 2 brothers, one rich and the other poor. The rich one was a goldsmith and evil-hearted. The poor one supported himself by making brooms, and was good and honorable. The poor one had 2 children who were twin brothers, and as like each other as 2 drops of water. The 2 boys went backwards and forwards to the rich house, and often got some of the scraps to eat. It happened once, when the poor man was going into the forest to fetch brushwood, that he saw a bird which was quite golden and more beautiful than any he had ever chanced to meet with. He picked up a small stone, threw it at him, and was lucky enough to hit him. But one golden feather only fell down, and the bird flew away. The man took the feather and carried it to his brother, who looked at it and said, "It is pure gold," and gave him a great deal of money for it. Next day, the man climbed into a birch tree and was about to cut off a couple of branches when the same bird flew out. And when the man searched, he found a nest, and an egg lay inside it, which was of gold. He took the egg home with him and carried it to his brother, who again said, "It is pure gold," and gave him what it was worth. At last the goldsmith said, "I should indeed like to have the bird itself." The poor man went into the forest for the 3rd time, and again saw the golden bird sitting on the tree. So he took a stone and brought it down, and carried it to his brother, who gave him a great heap of gold for it. "Now I can get on," thought he, and went contentedly home. The goldsmith was crafty and cunning, and knew very well what kind of a bird it was. He called his wife and said, "Roast me the gold bird, and take care that none of it is lost. I have a fancy to eat it all myself." The bird, however, was no common one, but of so wondrous a kind that whosoever ate its heart and liver found every morning a piece of gold beneath his pillow. The woman made the bird ready, put it on the spit, and let it roast. Now it happened that while it was at the fire and the woman was forced to go out of the kitchen on account of some other work, the 2 children of the poor broom maker ran in, stood by the spit, and turned it round once or twice. And as at that very moment 2 little bits of the bird fell down into the dripping tin, one of the boys said, "We will eat these 2 little bits. I am so hungry, and no one will ever miss them." Then the 2 ate the pieces, but the woman came into the kitchen and saw that they were eating something, and said, "What have ye been eating?" "2 little morsels which fell out of the bird," answered they. "That must have been the heart and the liver," said the woman, quite frightened, and in order that her husband might not miss them and be angry, she quickly killed a young cock, took out his heart and liver, and put them beside the golden bird. When it was ready, she carried it to the goldsmith, who consumed it all alone and left none of it. Next morning, however, when he felt beneath his pillow and expected to bring out the piece of gold, no more gold pieces were there than there had always been. The 2 children did not know what a piece of good fortune had fallen to their lot. Next morning, when they arose, something fell rattling to the ground, and when they picked it up, there were 2 gold pieces. They took them to their father, who was astonished, and said, "How can that have happened?" When next morning they again found 2, and so on daily, he went to his brother and told him the strange story. The goldsmith at once knew how it had come to pass, and that the children had eaten the heart and liver of the golden bird. And in order to revenge himself, and because he was envious and hard-hearted, he said to the father, "Thy children are in league with the evil. Do not take the gold, and do not suffer them to stay any longer in thy house, for he has them in his power, and may ruin thee likewise." The father feared the evil one, and painful as it was to him, he nevertheless led the twins forth into the forest, and with a sad heart left them there. And now the 2 children ran about the forest and sought the way home again, but could not find it, and only lost themselves more and more. At length they met with a huntsman who asked, "To whom do you children belong?" "We are the poor broom maker's boys," they replied, and they told him that their father would not keep them any longer in the house because a piece of gold lay every morning under their pillows. "Come," said the huntsman, "that is nothing so very bad, if at the same time you keep honest and are not idle." As the good man liked the children and had none of his own, he took them home with him and said, "I will be your father and bring you up till you are big." They learnt huntsmanship from him, and the piece of gold which each of them found when he awoke was kept for them by him in case they should need it in the future. When they were grown up, their foster father one day took them into the forest with him and said, "Today shall you make your trial shot, so that I may release you from your apprenticeship and make you huntsmen." They went with him to lie in wait and stayed there a long time, but no game appeared. The huntsman, however, looked above him and saw a covey of wild geese flying in the form of a triangle, and said to one of them, "Shoot me down, one from each corner." He did it, and thus accomplished his trial shot. Soon after, another covey came flying by in the form of the figure 2, and the huntsman bade the other also bring down one from each corner, and his trial shot was likewise successful. "Now," said the foster father, "I pronounce you out of your apprenticeship. You are skilled huntsmen." Thereupon the two brothers went forth together into the forest and took counsel with each other and planned something. And in the evening, when they had sat down to supper, they said to their foster father, "We will not touch food or take one mouthful until you have granted us a request." Said he, "What then is your request?" They replied, "We have now finished learning, and we must prove ourselves in the world. So allow us to go away and travel." Then spake the old man joyfully, "You talk like brave huntsmen. That which you desire has been my wish. Go forth, all will go well with you." Thereupon they ate and drank joyously together. When the appointed day came, their foster father presented each of them with a good gun and a dog, and let each of them take as many of his saved-up gold pieces as he chose. Then he accompanied them a part of the way, and when taking leave, he gave them a bright knife and said, "If ever you separate, stick this knife into a tree at the place where you part, and when one of you goes back, he will be able to see how his absent brother is faring for the side of the knife, which is turned in the direction by which he went, will rust if he dies, but will remain bright as long as he is alive. The two brothers went still farther onwards, and came to a forest which was so large that it was impossible for them to get out of it in one day. So they passed the night in it, and ate what they had put in their hunting pouches. But they walked all the second day likewise, and still did not get out, as they had nothing to eat. One of them said, "We must shoot something for ourselves, or we shall suffer from hunger," and loaded his gun, and looked about him. And when an old hare came running up towards them, he laid his gun on his shoulder. But the hare cried, "Dear huntsman, do but let me live. 2 little ones to thee I'll give," and sprang instantly into the thicket, and brought 2 young ones. But the little creatures played so merrily, and were so pretty, that the huntsmen could not find it in their hearts to kill them. They therefore kept them with them, and the little hares followed on foot. Soon after this, a fox crept past. They were just going to shoot it, but the fox cried, "Dear huntsman, do but let me live. 2 little ones I'll also give." He too brought 2 little foxes, and the huntsman did not like to kill them either, but gave them to the hares for company, and they followed behind. It was not long before a wolf strode out of the thicket. The huntsman made ready to shoot him, but the wolf cried, "Dear huntsman, do but let me live. 2 little ones I'll likewise give." The huntsman put the 2 wolves beside the other animals, and they followed behind them. Then a bear came, who wanted to trot about a little longer, and cried, "Dear huntsman, do but let me live. 2 little ones I too will give." The 2 young bears were added to the others, and there were already 8 of them. At length, who came? A lion came and tossed his mane. But the huntsmen did not let themselves be frightened, and aimed at him likewise. But the lion also said, "Dear huntsman, do but let me live. 2 little ones I too will give." And he brought his little ones to them, and now the huntsman had 2 lions, 2 bears, 2 wolves, 2 foxes, and 2 hares, who followed them and served them. In the meantime, their hunger was not appeased by this, and they said to the foxes, "Hark ye, cunning fellows, provide us with something to eat. You are crafty and deep." They replied, "Not far from here lies a village from which we have already brought many a fowl. We will show you the way there." So they went into the village, bought themselves something to eat, had some food given to their beasts, and then traveled onwards. The foxes, however, knew their way very well about the district, and where the poultry yards were, and were able to guide the huntsmen. Now they traveled about for a while, but could find no situations where they could remain together. So they said, "There is nothing else for it. We must part." They divided the animals so that each of them had a lion, a bear, a wolf, a fox, and a hare. Then they took leave of each other, promised to love each other like brothers till their death, and stuck the knife which their foster father had given them into a tree, after which one went east and the other went west. The younger, however, arrived with his beasts in a town which was all hung with black crape. He went into an inn and asked the host if he could accommodate his animals. The innkeeper gave him a stable where there was a hole in the wall, and the hare crept out and fetched himself the head of a cabbage, and the fox fetched himself a hen, and when he had devoured that, got the cock as well. But the wolf, the bear, and the lion could not get out because they were too big. Then the innkeeper let them be taken to a place where a cow was just then lying on the grass that they might eat till they were satisfied. And when the huntsman had taken care of his animals, he asked the innkeeper why the town was thus hung with black crape. Said the host, "Because our king's only daughter is to die tomorrow." The huntsman inquired if she was sick unto death. "No," answered the host, "she is vigorous and healthy. Nevertheless, she must die." "How is that?" asked the huntsman. "There is a high hill without the town whereon dwells a dragon, who every year must have a pure virgin, or he lays the whole country waste. And now all the maidens have already been given to him, and there is no longer anyone left but the king's daughter. Yet there is no mercy for her. She must be given up to him, and that is to be done tomorrow." Said the huntsman, "Why is the dragon not killed?" "Ah," replied the host, "so many knights have tried it, but it has cost all of them their lives. The king has promised that he who conquers the dragon shall have his daughter to wife, and shall likewise govern the kingdom after his own death." The huntsman said nothing more to this, but next morning took his animals, and with them ascended the dragon's hill. A little church stood at the top of it, and on the altar 3 full cups were standing with the inscription, "Whosoever empties, the cups will become the strongest man on earth, and will be able to wield the sword, which is buried before the threshold of the door." The huntsman did not drink, but went out and sought for the sword in the ground, but was unable to move it from its place. Then he went in and emptied the cups, and now he was strong enough to take up the sword, and his hand could quite easily wield it. When the hour came when the maiden was to be delivered over to the dragon, the king, the marshal, and courtiers accompanied her. From afar, she saw the huntsman on the dragon's hill and thought it was the dragon standing there waiting for her, and did not want to go up to him. But at last, because otherwise the whole town would have been destroyed, she was forced to go the miserable journey. The king and courtiers returned home full of grief. The king's marshal, however, was to stand still and see all from a distance. When the king's daughter got to the top of the hill, it was not the dragon which stood there, but the young huntsman who comforted her and said he would save her, led her into the church and locked her in. It was not long before the 7-headed dragon came thither with loud roaring. When he perceived the huntsman, he was astonished and said, "What business hast thou here on the hill?" The huntsman answered, "I want to fight with thee." Said the dragon, "Many knights have left their lives here. I shall soon have made an end of thee too." And he breathed fire out of 7 jaws. The fire was to have lighted the dry grass, and the huntsman was to have been suffocated in the heat and smoke. But the animals came running up and trampled out the fire. Then the dragon rushed upon the huntsman, but he swung his sword until it sang through the air and struck off 3 of his heads. Then the dragon grew right furious and rose up in the air and spat out flames of fire over the huntsman and was about to plunge down on him. But the huntsman once more drew out his sword and again cut off 3 of his heads. The monster became faint and sank down. Nevertheless, it was just able to rush upon the huntsman, but he with his last strength smote its tail off, and as he could fight no longer, called up his animals, who tore it in pieces. When the struggle was ended, the huntsman unlocked the church and found the king's daughter lying on the floor, as she had lost her senses with anguish and terror during the contest. he carried her out, and when she came to herself once more and opened her eyes, he showed her the dragon all cut to pieces, and told her that she was now delivered. She rejoiced and said, "Now thou wilt be my dearest husband, for my father has promised me to him who kills the dragon." Thereupon she took off her necklace of coral and divided it amongst the animals in order to reward them, and the lion received the golden clasp. Her pocket handkerchief, however, on which was her name, she gave to the huntsman, who went and cut the tongues out of the dragon's 7 heads, wrapped them in the handkerchief, and preserved them carefully. That done, as he was so faint and weary with the fire and the battle, he said to the maiden, "We are both faint and weary. We will sleep a while." Then she said, "Yes," and they lay down on the ground, and the huntsman said to the lion, "Thou shalt keep watch that no one surprises us in our sleep." And both fell asleep. The lion lay down beside them to watch, but he also was so weary with the fight that he called to the bear and said, "Lie down near me. I must sleep a little, if anything comes waken me." Then the bear lay down beside him, but he also was tired, and called the wolf and said, "Lie down by me. I must sleep a little, but if anything comes waken me." Then the wolf lay down by him, but he was tired likewise, and called the fox and said, "Lie down by me. I must sleep a little. If anything comes waken me." Then the fox lay down beside him, but he too was weary, and called the hare and said, "Lie down near me. I must sleep a little, and if anything should come, waken me." Then the hare sat down by him, but the poor hare was tired too, and had no one whom he could call there to keep watch, and fell asleep. And now the king's daughter, the huntsman, the lion, the bear, the wolf, the fox, and the hare were all sleeping a sound sleep. The marshal, however, who was to look on from a distance, took courage when he did not see the dragon flying away with the maiden, and finding that all the hill had become quiet, ascended it. There lay the dragon hacked and hewn to pieces on the ground, and not far from it were the king's daughter and a huntsman with his animals, and all of them were sunk in a sound sleep. And as he was wicked and godless, he took his sword, cut off the huntsman's head, and seized the maiden in his arms, and carried her down the hill. Then she awoke and was terrified, But the marshal said, "Thou art in my hands. Thou shalt say that it was I who killed the dragon." "I cannot do that," she replied, "for it was a huntsman with his animals who did it." Then he drew his sword and threatened to kill her if she did not obey him, and so compelled her that she promised it. Then he took her to the king, who did not know how to contain himself for joy when he once more looked on his dear child in life, whom he had believed to have been torn to pieces by the monster. The marshal said to him, "I have killed the dragon and delivered the maiden and the whole kingdom as well. Therefore, I demand her as my wife, as was promised." The king said to the maiden, "Is what he says true?" "Ah, yes," she answered. "It must indeed be true. But I will not consent to have the wedding celebrated until after a year and a day." For she thought in that time she should hear something of her dear huntsman. The animals, however, were still lying sleeping beside their dead master on the dragon's hill, and there came a great humble-bee and lighted on the hare's nose, but the hare wiped it off with his paw and went on sleeping. The humble-bee came a second time, but the hare again rubbed it off and slept on. Then it came for the third time and stung his nose so that he awoke. As soon as the hare was awake, he roused the fox, and the fox the wolf, and the wolf the bear, and the bear the lion. And when the lion awoke and saw that the maiden was gone and his master was dead, he began to roar frightfully and cried, "Who has done that, bear? Why didst thou not waken me?" The bear asked the wolf, "Why didst thou not waken me?" And the wolf the fox, "Why didst thou not waken me?" And the fox the hare, "Why didst thou not waken me?" The poor hare alone did not know what answer to make, and the blame rested with him. Then they were just going to fall upon him, but he entreated them and said, "Kill me not, I will bring our master to life again. I know a mountain on which a root grows, which when placed in the mouth of anyone, cures him of all illness and every wound. But the mountain lies 200 hours' journey from here." When the lion said, "In 24 hours must thou have run thither, and have come back, and have brought the root with thee," then the hare sprang away, and in 24 hours he was back and brought the root with him. The lion put the huntsman's head on again, and the hare placed the root in his mouth, and immediately everything united together again, and his heart beat, and life came back. Then the huntsman awoke, and was alarmed when he did not see the maiden, and thought, "She must have gone away whilst I was sleeping, in order to get rid of me." The lion, in his great haste, had put his master's head on the wrong way round, but the huntsman did not observe it because of his melancholy thoughts about the king's daughter. But at noon, when he was going to eat something, he saw that his head was turned backwards and could not understand it, and asked the animals what had happened to him in his sleep. Then the lion told him that they too had all fallen asleep from weariness, and on awaking had found him dead, with his head cut off, that the hare had brought the life-giving root, and that he, in his haste, had laid hold of the head the wrong way, but that he would repair his mistake. Then he tore the huntsman's head off, again turned it round, and the hare healed it with the root. The huntsman, however, was sad at heart, and traveled about the world, and made his animals dance before people. It came to pass that precisely at the end of 1 year, he came back to the same town where he had delivered the king's daughter from the dragon. And this time the town was gaily hung with red cloth. Then he said to the host, "What does this mean? Last year the town was all hung with black crape. What means the red cloth today?" The host answered, "Last year our king's daughter was to have been delivered over to the dragon, but the marshal fought with it and killed it, and so tomorrow their wedding is to be solemnized, and that is why the town was then hung with black crape for mourning, and is today covered with red cloth for joy." Next day, when the wedding was to take place, the huntsman said at midday to the innkeeper, "Do you believe, Sir Host, that I, while with you here, today shall eat bread from the king's own table?" "Nay," said the host, "I would bet 100 pieces of gold that will not come true." The huntsman accepted the wager and set against it a purse with just the same number of gold pieces. Then he called the hare and said, "Go, my dear runner, and fetch me some of the bread which the king is eating." So, now the little hare was the lowest of the animals, and could not transfer this order to any the others, but had to get on his legs himself. "Alas," thought he, "if I bound through the streets thus alone, the butcher's dogs will all be after me." It happened as he expected, and the dogs came after him, and wanted to make holes in his good skin. But he sprang away. Have never seen one running, and sheltered himself in a sentry box without the soldier being aware of it. Then the dogs came and wanted to have him out, but the soldier did not understand a jest and struck them with the butt end of his gun till they ran away, yelling and howling. As soon as the hare saw that the way was clear, he ran into the palace, and straight to the king's daughter sat down under her chair and scratched at her foot. Then she said, "Wilt thou get away?" and thought it was her dog. The hare scratched her foot for the second time, and she again said, "Wilt thou get away?" and thought it was her dog. But the hare did not let itself be turned from its purpose, and scratched her for the third time. Then she peeped down and knew the hare by its collar. She took him on her lap, carried him into her chamber, and said, "Dear hare, what dost thou want?" He answered, "My master who killed the dragon is here, and has sent me to ask for a loaf of bread like that which the king eats." Then she was full of joy, and had the baker summoned, and ordered him to bring a loaf such as was eaten by the king. The little hare said, "But the baker must likewise carry it thither for me, that the butcher's dogs may do no harm to me." The baker carried it for him as far as the door of the inn, and then the hare got on his hind legs, took the loaf in his front paws, and carried it to his master. Then said the huntsman, "Behold, Sir Host, the 100 pieces of gold are mine." The host was astonished, but the huntsman went on to say, "Yes, sir, host, I have the bread, but now I will likewise have some of the king's roast meat." The host said, "I should indeed like to see that," but he would make no more wagers. The huntsman called the fox and said, "My little fox, go and fetch me some roast meat, such as the king eats." The red fox knew the byways better, and went by holes and corners, without any dog seeing him, seated himself under the chair of the king's daughter, and scratched her foot. Then she looked down and recognized the fox by its collar, took him into her chamber with her, and said, "Dear fox, what dost thou want?" He answered, "My master who killed the dragon is here, and has sent me. I am to ask for some roast meat, such as the king is eating." Then she made the cook come, who was obliged to prepare a roast joint, the same as was eaten by the king, and to carry it for the fox as far as the door. Then the fox took the dish, waved away with his tail the flies which had settled on the meat, and then carried it to his master. "Behold, Sir Host," said the huntsman, "bread and meat are here, but now I will also have proper vegetables with it, such as are eaten by the king." Then he called the wolf and said, "Dear wolf, go thither and fetch me vegetables such as the king eats." Then the wolf went straight to the palace, as he feared no one. And when he got to the king's daughter's chamber, he twitched at the back of her dress so that she was forced to look round. She recognized him by his collar and took him into her chamber with her and said, "Dear wolf, what dost thou want?" He answered, "My master, who killed the dragon, is here. I am to ask for some vegetables such as the king eats." Then she made the cook come, and he had to make ready a dish of vegetables such as the king ate, and had to carry it for the wolf as far as the door. And then the wolf took the dish from him and carried it to his master. "Behold, Sir Host," said the huntsman, "now I have bread and meat and vegetables, but I will also have some pastry to eat, like that which the king eats." He called the bear and said, "Dear bear, thou art fond of licking anything sweet. Go and bring me some confectionery, such as the king eats." Then the bear trotted to the palace, and everyone got out of his way. But when he went to the guard, they presented their muskets and would not let him go into the royal palace. But he got up on his hind legs and gave them a few boxes on the ears, right and left with his paws, so that the whole watch broke up. And then he went straight to the king's daughter, placed himself behind her, and growled a little. Then she looked behind her, knew the bear, and bade him go into her room with her, and said, "Dear bear, what dost thou want?" He answered, "My master who killed the dragon is here, and I am to ask for some confectionery such as the king eats." Then she summoned her confectioner, who had to bake confectionery such as the king ate, and carry it to the door for the bear. Then the bear first licked up the comfits, which had rolled down, and then he stood upright, took the dish, and carried it to his master. "Behold, Sir Host," said the huntsman, "now I have bread, meat, vegetables, and confectionery, but I will drink wine also, and such as the king drinks." He called his lion to him and said, "Dear lion, thou thyself likest to drink till thou art intoxicated. Go and fetch me some wine, such as is drunk by the king." Then the lion strode through the streets, and the people fled from him. And when he came to the watch, they wanted to bar the way against him. But he did but roar once, and they all ran away. Then the lion went to the royal apartment and knocked at the door with his tail. Then the king's daughter came forth and was almost afraid of the lion, but she knew him by the golden clasp of her necklace and bade him go with her into her chamber and said, "Dear lion, what wilt thou have?" He answered, "My master who killed the dragon is here, and I am to ask for some wine, such as is drunk by the king." Then she bade the cupbearer be called, who was to give the lion some wine, like that which was drunk by the king. The lion said, "I will go with him and see that I get the right wine." Then he went down with the cupbearer, and when they were below the cupbearer, wanted to draw him some of the common wine that was drunk by the king's servants. But the lion said, "Stop, I will taste the wine first." And he drew half a measure and swallowed it down at one draught. "No," said he, "that is not right." The cupbearer looked at him askance, but went on, and was about to give him some out of another barrel, which was for the king's marshal. The lion said, "Stop, let me taste the wine first," and drew half a measure and drank it. "That is better, but still not right," said he. Then the cupbearer grew angry and said, "How can a stupid animal like you understand wine?" But the lion gave him a blow behind the ears, which made him fall down, by no means gently. And when he had got up again, he conducted the lion quite silently into a little cellar apart, where the king's wine lay, from which no one ever drank. The lion first drew half a measure and tried the wine, and then he said, "That may possibly be the right sort," and bade the cupbearer fill 6 bottles of it. And now they went upstairs again. But when the lion came out of the cellar into the open air, he reeled here and there, and was rather drunk, and the cupbearer was forced to carry the wine as far as the door for him. And then the lion took the handle of the basket in his mouth and took it to his master. The huntsman said, "Behold, Sir Host, here have I bread, meat, vegetables, confectionery, and wine such as the king has, and now I will dine with my animals." And he sat down and ate and drank, and gave the hare, the fox, the wolf, the bear, and the lion also to eat and to drink, and was joyful, for he saw that the king's daughter still loved him. And when he had finished his dinner, he said, "Sir host, now have I eaten and drunk, as the king eats and drinks, and now I will go to the king's court and marry the king's daughter." Said the host, "How can that be, when she already has a betrothed husband, and when the wedding is to be solemnized today?" Then the huntsman drew forth the handkerchief which the king's daughter had given him on the dragon's hill, and in which were folded the monster's 7 tongues, and said, "That which I hold in my hand shall help me to do it." Then the innkeeper looked at the handkerchief and said, "Whatever I believe, I do not believe that, and I am willing to stake my house and courtyard on it." The huntsman, however, took a bag with 1,000 gold pieces, put it on the table, and said, "I stake that on it." Now the king said to his daughter at the royal table, "What did all the wild animals want which have been coming to thee and going in and out of my palace?" She replied, "I may not tell you, but send and have the master of these animals brought, and you will do well." So the king sent a servant to the inn and invited the stranger, and the servant came just as the huntsman had laid his wager with the innkeeper. Then said he, "Behold, Sir host, now the king sends his servant and invites me, but I do not go in this way." And he said to the servant, "I request the Lord King to send me royal clothing and a carriage with 6 horses and servants to attend me." When the king heard the answer, he said to his daughter, "What shall I do?" She said, "Cause him to be fetched as he desires to be, and you will do well." Then the king sent royal apparel, a carriage with 6 horses and servants to wait on him. When the huntsman saw them coming, he said, "Behold, Sir host, now I am fetched as I desired to be." And he put on the royal garments, took the handkerchief with the dragon's tongues with him, and drove off to the king. When the king saw him coming, he said to his daughter, "How shall I receive him?" She answered, "Go to meet him, and you will do well." Then the king went to meet him and led him in, and his animals followed. The king gave him a seat near himself, and his daughter, and the marshal, as bridegroom sat on the other side, but no longer knew the huntsman. And now, at this very moment, the 7 heads of the dragon were brought in as a spectacle. And the king said, "The 7 heads were cut off the dragon by the marshal, wherefore today I give him my daughter to wife." The huntsman stood up, opened the 7 mouths, and said, "Where are the 7 tongues of the dragon?" Then was the marshal terrified, and grew pale, and knew not what answer he should make. And at length, in his anguish, he said, "Dragons have no tongues." The huntsman said, "Liars ought to have none, but the dragon's tongues are the tokens of the victor." And he unfolded the handkerchief, and there lay all 7 inside it. And he put each tongue in the mouth to which it belonged, and it fitted exactly. Then he took the handkerchief on which the name of the princess was embroidered, and showed it to the maiden, and asked to whom she had given it. And she replied, "To him who killed the dragon." And then he called his animals, and took the collar off each of them, and the golden clasp from the lion, and showed them to the maiden, and asked to whom they belonged. She answered, "The necklace and golden clasp were mine, but I divided them among the animals who helped to conquer the dragon." Then spake the huntsman, "When I, tired with the fight, was resting and sleeping, the marshal came and cut off my head. Then he carried away the king's daughter, and gave out that it was he who had killed the dragon, but that he lied. I prove with the tongues, the handkerchief, and the necklace." And then he related how his animals had healed him by means of a wonderful root, and how he had traveled about with them for 1 year, and had at length again come there, and had learnt the treachery of the marshal by the innkeeper's story. Then the king asked his daughter, "Is it true that this man killed the dragon?" And she answered, "Yes, it is true. Now can I reveal the wicked deed of the marshal as it has come to light without my connivance? For he wrung from me a promise to be silent. For this reason, however, did I make the condition that the marriage should not be solemnized for 1 year and a day." Then the king bade 12 counselors be summoned, who were to pronounce judgment on the marshal, and they sentenced him to be torn to pieces by 4 bulls. The marshal was therefore executed, but the king gave his daughter to the huntsman, and named him his viceroy over the whole kingdom. The wedding was celebrated with great joy, and the young king caused his father and his foster father to be brought, and loaded them with treasures. Neither did he forget the innkeeper, but sent for him and said, "Behold, Sir Host, I have married the king's daughter, and your house and yard are mine." The host said, "Yes, according to justice it is so." But the young king said, "It shall be done according to mercy," and told him that he should keep his house and yard, and gave him the 1,000 pieces of gold as well. And now the young king and queen were thoroughly happy and lived in gladness together. He often went out hunting because it was a delight to him, and the faithful animals had to accompany him. In the neighborhood, however, there was a forest of which it was reported that it was haunted, and that whosoever did but enter it did not easily get out again. The young king, however, had a great inclination to hunt in it, and let the old king have no peace until he allowed him to do so. So he rode forth with a great following, and when he came to the forest, he saw a snow-white hart, and said to his people, "Wait here until I return. I want to chase that beautiful creature." And he rode into the forest after it followed only by his animals. The attendants halted and waited until evening, but he did not return, so they rode home and told the young queen that the young king had followed a white hart into the enchanted forest and had not come back again. Then she was in the greatest concern about him. He, however, had still continued to ride on and on after the beautiful wild animal, and had never been able to overtake it. When he thought he was near enough to aim, he instantly saw it bound away into the far distance, and at length it vanished altogether. And now he perceived that he had penetrated deep into the forest and blew his horn, but he received no answer, for his attendants could not hear it. And as night too was falling, he saw that he could not get home that day. So he dismounted from his horse, lighted himself a fire near a tree, and resolved to spend the night by it. While he was sitting by the fire, and his animals also were lying down beside him, it seemed to him that he heard a human voice. He looked round, but could perceive nothing. Soon afterwards, he again heard a groan, as if from above, and then he looked up and saw an old woman sitting in the tree, who wailed unceasingly, "Oh, oh, how cold I am." And said he, "Come down and warm thyself if thou art cold." But she said, "No, thy animals will bite me." He answered, "They will do thee no harm. Old mother, do come down." She, however, was a witch, and said, "I will throw down a wand from the tree, and if thou strikest them on the back with it, they will owe me no harm." Then she threw him a small wand, and he struck them with it, and instantly they lay still and were turned into stone. And when the witch was safe from the animals, she leapt down and touched him also with a wand, and changed him to stone. Thereupon she laughed, and dragged him and the animals into a vault where many more such stones already lay. As, however, the young king did not come back at all, the queen's anguish and care grew constantly greater. And it so happened that at this very time the other brother, who had turned to the east when they separated, came into the kingdom. He had sought a situation and had found none, and had then traveled about here and there, and had made his animals dance. Then it came into his mind that he would just go and look at the knife that they had thrust in the trunk of a tree at their parting, that he might learn how his brother was. When he got there, his brother's side of the knife was half rusted and half bright. Then he was alarmed and thought, "A great misfortune must have befallen my brother, but perhaps I can still save him, for half the knife is still bright." He and his animals traveled towards the west, and when he entered the gate of the town, the guard came to meet him and asked if he was to announce him to his consort, the young queen, who had for a couple of days been in the greatest sorrow about his staying away, and was afraid he had been killed in the enchanted forest. The sentries indeed thought no otherwise than that he was the young king himself, for he looked so like him, and had wild animals running behind him. Then he saw that they were speaking of his brother, and thought, "It will be better if I pass myself off for him, and then I can rescue him more easily." So he allowed himself to be escorted into the castle by the guard, and was received with the greatest joy. The young queen indeed thought that he was her husband, and asked him why he had stayed away so long. He answered, "I had lost myself in a forest, and could not find my way out again any sooner." At night he was taken to the royal bed, but he laid a two-edged sword between him and the young queen. She did not know what that could mean, but did not venture to ask. He remained in the palace a couple of days, and in the meantime inquired into everything which related to the enchanted forest. And at last he said, "I must hunt there once more." The king and the young queen wanted to persuade him not to do it, but he stood out against them and went forth with a larger following. When he had got into the forest, it fared with him as with his brother. He saw a white hart and said to his people, "Stay here and wait until I return. I want to chase the lovely wild beast." And then he rode into the forest, and his animals ran after him. But he could not overtake the hart, and got so deep into the forest that he was forced to pass the night there. And when he had lighted a fire, he heard someone wailing above him, "Oh, oh, oh, how cold I am." Then he looked up, and the self-same witch was sitting in the tree. Said he, "If thou art cold, come down, little old mother, and warm thyself." She answered, "No, thy animals will bite me." But he said, "They will not hurt thee." Then she cried, "I will throw down a wand to thee, and if thou smitest them with it, they will do me no harm." When the huntsman heard that he had no confidence in the old woman, and said, "I will not strike my animals. Come down, or I will fetch thee." Then she cried, "What dost thou want? Thou shalt not touch me." But he replied, "If thou dost not come, I will shoot thee." Said she, "Shoot away. I do not fear thy bullets." Then he aimed and fired at her, but the witch was proof against all leaden bullets, and laughed and yelled and cried, "Thou shalt not hit me." The huntsman knew what to do, tore 3 silver buttons off his coat, and loaded his gun with them, for against them her arts were useless. And when he fired, she fell down at once with a scream. Then he set his foot on her and said, "Old witch, if thou dost not instantly confess where my brother is, I will seize thee with both my hands and throw thee into the fire." She was in a great fright, begged for mercy, and said, "He and his animals lie in a vault turned to stone." Then he compelled her to go thither with him, threatened her, and said, "Old sea cat, now shalt thou make my brother and all the human beings lying here alive again, or thou shalt go into the fire." She took a wand and touched the stones, and then his brother, with his animals, came to life again, and many others, merchants, artisans, and shepherds arose, thanked him for their deliverance. and went to their homes. But when the twin brothers saw each other again, they kissed each other and rejoiced with all their hearts. Then they seized the witch, bound her, and laid her on the fire. And when she was burnt, the forest opened of its own accord, and was light and clear, and the king's palace could be seen at about the distance of a 3 hours' walk. Thereupon the two brothers went home together, and on the way told each other their histories. And when the youngest said that he was ruler of the whole country in the king's stead, the other observed that I remarked very well, for when I came to the town and was taken for thee, all royal honors were paid me. The young queen looked on me as her husband, and I had to eat at her side and sleep in thy bed. When the other heard that he became so jealous and angry that he drew his sword and struck off his brother's head. But when he saw him lying there dead, and saw his red blood flowing, he repented most violently. My brother delivered me, cried he, and I have killed him for it. And he bewailed him aloud. Then his hare came and offered to go and bring some of the root of life, and bound it away, and brought it while yet there was time. And the dead man was brought to life again, and knew nothing about the wound. After this, they journeyed onwards, and the youngest said, Thou lookest like me hast royal apparel on as I have, and the animals follow thee as they do me. We will go in by opposite gates, and arrive at the same time from the 2 sides, in the aged king's presence. So they separated, and at the same time came the watchman from the one door and from the other, and announced that the young king and the animals had returned from the chase. The king said, It is not possible. The gates lie quite a mile apart. In the meantime, however, the 2 brothers entered the courtyard of the palace from opposite sides, and both mounted the steps. Then the king said to the daughter, Say which is thy husband. Each of them looks exactly like the other. I cannot tell. Then she was in great distress and could not tell. But at last she remembered the necklace which she had given to the animals, and she sought for and found her little golden clasp on the lion, and she cried in her delight, He who is followed by this lion is my true husband. Then the young king laughed and said, Yes, he is the right one. And they sat down together to table and ate and drank, and were merry. At night, when the young king went to bed, his wife said, "Why hast thou, for these last nights, always laid a two-edged sword in our bed? I thought thou hadst a wish to kill me." Then he knew how true his brother had been. The Fisherman and His Wife. There was once a fisherman and his wife who lived together in a hovel by the seashore. And the fisherman went out every day with his hook and line to catch fish, and he angled and angled. One day he was sitting with his rod and looking into the clear water, and he sat and sat. At last down went the line to the bottom of the water, and when he drew it up, he found a great flounder on the hook. And the flounder said to him, "Fisherman, listen to me. Let me go. I am not a real fish, but an enchanted prince. What good shall I be to you? If you land me, I shall not taste well. So put me back into the water again, and let me swim away." "Well," said the fisherman, "no need of so many words about the matter, as you can speak. I had much rather let you swim away." Then he put him back into the clear water, and the flounder sank to the bottom, leaving a long streak of blood behind him. Then the fisherman got up and went home to his wife in their hovel. "Well, husband," said the wife, "have you caught nothing today?" "No," said the man. "That is, I did catch a flounder, but as he said he was an enchanted prince, I let him go again." "Then did you wish for nothing?" said the wife. "No," said the man. "What should I wish for?" "Oh dear," said the wife, "and it is so dreadful always to live in this evil-smelling hovel, Jay. You might as well have wished for a little cottage. Go again and call him. Tell him we want a little cottage. I dare say he will give it us. Go and be quick." And when he went back, the sea was green and yellow and not nearly so clear. So he stood and said, O man, if man you be or flounder, flounder in the sea. Such a tiresome wife I've got, for she wants what I do not." Then the flounder came swimming up and said, "Now then, what does she want?" "Oh," said the man, "you know when I caught you, my wife says I ought to have wished for something. She does not want to live any longer in the hovel and would rather have a cottage." "Go home with you," said the flounder. "She has it already." So the man went home and found, instead of the hovel, a little cottage, and his wife was sitting on a bench before the door. And she took him by the hand and said to him, "Come in, and see if this is not a great improvement." So they went in, and there was a little house place, and a beautiful little bedroom, a kitchen and larder, with all sorts of furniture, and iron, and brass ware of the very best. And at the back was a little yard, with fowls and ducks, and a little garden full of green vegetables and fruit. "Look," said the wife, "is not that nice?" "Yes," said the man, "if this can only last, we shall be very well contented." "We will see about that," said the wife. And after a meal, they went to bed. So all went well for a week or fortnight, when the wife said, "Look here, husband, the cottage is really too confined, and the yard and garden are so small. I think the flounder had better get us a larger house. I should like very much to live in a large stone castle. So go to your fish, and he will send us a castle." "Zero, my dear wife," said the man. "The cottage is good enough. What do we want a castle for?" "We want one," said the wife. "Go along with you. The flounder can give us one." "Now, wife," said the man, "the flounder gave us the cottage. I do not like to go to him again. He may be angry." "Go along," said the wife. "He might just as well give us it as not. Do as I say." The man felt very reluctant and unwilling, and he said to himself, "It is not the right thing to do." Nevertheless, he went. So when he came to the seaside, the water was purple and dark blue and gray and thick, and not green and yellow as before. And he stood and said, O man, if man you be, or flounder, flounder in the sea, such a tiresome wife I've got, for she wants what I do not. Now then, what does she want? Said the flounder. Oh, said the man, half frightened. She wants to live in a large stone castle. Go home with you. She is already standing before the door, said the flounder. Then the man went home, as he supposed. But when he got there stood in the place of the cottage a great castle of stone, and his wife was standing on the steps about to go in. So she took him by the hand and said, Let us enter. With that, he went in with her, and in the castle was a great hall with a marble pavement, and there were a great many servants, who led them through large doors, and the passages were decked with tapestry, and the rooms with golden chairs and tables and crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. And all the rooms had carpets, and the tables were covered with eatables, and the best wine for anyone who wanted them. And at the back of the house was a great stable yard for horses and cattle and carriages of the finest. Besides, there was a splendid, large garden with the most beautiful flowers and fine fruit trees, and a pleasance full 1/2 mile long, with deer and oxen and sheep and everything that heart could wish for. "There," said the wife, "is not this beautiful?" "Oh, yes," said the man, "if it will only last, we can live in this fine castle and be very well contented." "We will see about that," said the wife. "In the meanwhile, we will sleep upon it." With that, they went to bed. The next morning, the wife was awake first, just at the break of day, and she looked out and saw from her bed the beautiful country lying all round. The man took no notice of it, so she poked him in the side with her elbow and said, "Husband, get up and just look out of the window. Look, just think, if we could be king over all this country. Just go to your fish and tell him we should like to be king." "Now, wife," said the man, "what should we be kings for? I don't want to be king." "Well," said the wife, "if you don't want to be king, I will be king." "Now, wife," said the man, "what do you want to be king for? I could not ask him such a thing." "Why not?" said the wife. "You must go directly all the same. I must be king." So the man went very much put out that his wife should want to be king. It is not the right thing to do, not at all the right thing, thought the man. He did not at all want to go, and yet he went all the same. And when he came to the sea, the water was quite dark gray, and rushed far inland, and had an ill smell. And he stood and said, O man, if man you be or flounder in the sea. Such a tiresome wife I've got, for she wants what I do not. Now then, what does she want? Said the fish. Oh dear, said the man, she wants to be king. Go home with you. She is so already, said the fish. So the man went back, and as he came to the palace, he saw it was very much larger, and had great towers and splendid gateways. The herald stood before the door, and a number of soldiers with kettle drums and trumpets. And when he came inside, everything was of marble and gold, and there were many curtains with great golden tassels. Then he went through the doors of the saloon to where the great throne room was, and there was his wife sitting upon a throne of gold and diamonds, and she had a great golden crown on, and the scepter in her hand was of pure gold and jewels, and on each side stood 6 pages in a row, each one a head shorter than the other. So the man went up to her and said, "Well, wife, so now you are king." "Yes," said the wife, "now I am king." So then he stood and looked at her, and when he had gazed at her for some time, he said, "Well, wife, this is fine for you to be king. Now there is nothing more to wish for." "O husband," said the wife, seeming quite restless, "I am tired of this already. Go to your fish and tell him that now I am king, I must be emperor." "Now, wife," said the man, "what do you want to be emperor for?" "Husband," said she, "go and tell the fish I want to be emperor." "Oh dear," said the man, "he could not do it. I cannot ask him such a thing. There is but one emperor at a time. The fish can't possibly make anyone emperor. Indeed, he can't." "Now look here," said the wife, "I am king, and you are only my husband, so will you go at once? Go along, for if he was able to make me king, he is able to make me emperor. And I will and must be emperor. So go along, cha." So he was obliged to go, and as he went, he felt very uncomfortable about it, and he thought to himself, "It is not at all the right thing to do. To want to be emperor is really going too far. The flounder will soon be beginning to get tired of this." With that, he came to the sea, and the water was quite black and thick, and the foam flew, and the wind blew, and the man was terrified. But he stood and said, "O man, if man you be, or flounder, flounder in the sea, such a tiresome wife I've got, for she wants what I do not." "What is it now?" said the fish. "Oh dear," said the man, "my wife wants to be emperor." "Go home with you," said the fish. "She is emperor already." So the man went home and found the castle adorned with polished marble and alabaster figures and golden gates. The troops were being marshaled before the door, and they were blowing trumpets and beating drums and cymbals. And when he entered, he saw barons and earls and dukes waiting about like servants, and the doors were of bright gold. And he saw his wife sitting upon a throne made of one entire piece of gold, and it was about 2 miles high, and she had a great golden crown, on which was about 3 yards high, set with brilliants and carbuncles, and in one hand she held the scepter, and in the other the globe. And on both sides of her stood pages in 2 rows, all arranged according to their size, from the most enormous giant of 2 miles high to the tiniest dwarf of the size of my little finger. And before her stood earls and dukes in crowds. So the man went up to her and said, "Well, wife, so now you are emperor." "Yes," said she, "now I am emperor." Then he went and sat down and had a good look at her, and then he said, "Well, now, wife, there is nothing left to be. Now you are emperor." "What are you talking about, husband?" said she. "I am emperor, and next I will be pope. So go and tell the fish so." "Oh dear," said the man. "What is it that you don't want? You can never become pope. There is but one pope in Christendom, and the fish can't possibly do it." "Husband," said she, "no more words about it. I must and will be pope, so go along to the fish." "Now, wife," said the man, "how can I ask him such a thing? It is too bad. It is asking a little too much. And besides, he could not do it." "What rubbish," said the wife. "If he could make me emperor, he can make me pope. Go along and ask him. I am emperor, and you are only my husband, so go you must." So he went feeling very frightened, and he shivered and shook, and his knees trembled. And there arose a great wind, and the clouds flew by, and it grew very dark, and the sea rose mountains high, and the ships were tossed about, and the sky was partly blue in the middle, but at the sides very dark and red, as in a great tempest. And he felt very desponding, and stood trembling, and said, "O man, O man, if man you be, or flounder, flounder in the sea. Such a tiresome wife I've got, for she wants what I do not." "Well, what now?" said the fish. "Oh dear," said the man, "she wants to be pope." "Go home with you, she is pope already," said the fish. So he went home, and he found himself before a great church with palaces all round. He had to make his way through a crowd of people. And when he got inside, he found the place lighted up with thousands and thousands of lights. And his wife was clothed in a golden garment, and sat upon a very high throne, and had 3 golden crowns on all, in the greatest priestly pomp. and on both sides of her there stood 2 rows of lights of all sizes, from the size of the longest tower to the smallest rushlight, and all the emperors and kings were kneeling before her and kissing her foot. "Well, wife," said the man, and sat and stared at her. "So you are Pope?" "Yes," said she, "now I am Pope." And he went on gazing at her till he felt dazzled, as if he were sitting in the sun. And after a little time he said, "Well, now, wife, what is there left to be? Now you are Pope." And she sat up, very stiff and straight, and said nothing. And he said again, "Well, wife, I hope you are contented at last with being Pope. You can be nothing more." "We will see about that," said the wife. With that, they both went to bed. But she was as far as ever from being contented, and she could not get to sleep for thinking of what she should like to be next. The husband, however, slept as fast as a top after his busy day, but the wife tossed and turned from side to side the whole night, through thinking all the while what she could be next, but nothing would occur to her. And when she saw the red dawn, she slipped off the bed and sat before the window to see the sun rise. And as it came up, she said, "Ah, I have it. What if I should make the sun and moon to rise, husband?" She cried and stuck her elbow in his ribs. "Wake up and go to your fish and tell him he want power over the sun and moon." The man was so fast asleep that when he started up, he fell out of bed. Then he shook himself together and opened his eyes and said, "Oh, wife, what did you say?" "Husband," said she, "if I cannot get the power of making the sun and moon rise when I want them, I shall never have another quiet hour. Go to the fish and tell him so." "Oh, wife," said the man, and fell on his knees to her. "The fish can really not do that for you. I grant you, he could make you emperor and pope. Do be contented with that, I beg of you." And she became wild with impatience and screamed out, "I can wait no longer. Go at once." And so off he went as well as he could for fright. And a dreadful storm arose, so that he could hardly keep his feet, and the houses and trees were blown down, and the mountains trembled, and rocks fell in the sea. The sky was quite black, and it thundered and lightened, and the waves crowned with foam ran mountains high. So he cried out without being able to hear his own words. O man, if man you be, or flounder, flounder in the sea, such a tiresome wife I've got, for she wants what I do not. Well, what now? Said the flounder. Oh dear, said the man, she wants to order about the sun and moon. Go home with you, said the flounder. You will find her in the old hovel. And there they are, sitting to this very day. The Goose Girl. There was once in a far-off kingdom an age queen whose consort had long been gathered to the grave. Many winters had she lived in widowhood, yet in her heart burned a steadfast love for her only daughter, a princess of such grace and beauty that even strangers marveled at her. This maiden had long been promised in marriage to the son of a distant king, and when the season appointed for the wedding came nigh, the old queen knew that she must send her beloved child into a foreign land, never again to dwell beneath her mother's roof. The queen, being wise and full of care, gathered together a dowry worthy of a princess, chests of shining garments woven with gold vessels of silver, chased with flowers, cups adorned with jewels and ornaments, rich beyond telling. For she thought, if I cannot keep her near, at least let her go forth in honor clothed, as becomes her station, to guard and serve her on the road. The queen gave into her hand a waiting woman of good seeming. Yet this gentlewoman's heart was proud and false. 2 horses were made ready, one for the maiden, one for her servant. The princess's steed was Falada, a creature of rare wisdom, for by strange gift of nature he could speak with human tongue. When the hour of parting struck, the queen called her daughter alone into her chamber. There she took a little knife, pricked her finger, till 3 drops of blood fell, and caught them on a white linen cloth. This she pressed into the maiden's hand, saying, Keep these well, my child, for they shall stand thee in need when sorrow overtakes thee. Then with tears and embraces they parted, and the princess, tucking the cloth within her bosom, mounted Falada and rode away. After an hour's journey, she grew faint with thirst, and seeing a brook that ran sparkling by the roadside, she said to her waiting woman, Pray dismount, and fetch me water in the golden cup thou carriest, for my lips are dry. But the waiting woman tossed her head and said scornfully, "Fetch it thyself, if thou art thirsty. I am no drudge to wait on thee." The princess, compelled by need, alighted and stooped to drink with her own lips from the running stream. And as she bent down, she sighed, "Alas, alas." Then the 3 drops of blood in her bosom answered softly, "If thy mother knew thy grief, her heart would break for thee in brief." The maiden said nothing, but remounted meekly, and they journeyed further. Soon the sun waxed hot, and thirst returned upon her. Again they came to a stream, and again she begged the waiting woman for aid, forgetting the scorn of before. Yet the woman mocked her still more bitterly. "Drink as peasants drink, if drink thou must. I will not serve thee." So the princess slid down and stooped once more, and again she sighed, and the drops of blood murmured, "If thy mother knew thy grief, her heart would break for thee in brief." But this time, as she stooped, the white cloth with the drops of blood slipped from her bosom and drifted upon the water, carried swiftly away till it vanished. The maiden in her weariness marked it not, but the false waiting woman saw and rejoiced, for she knew that the princess had lost her safeguard and now was weak and helpless. Straightway she set upon her with harsh words, commanding her to strip off her royal garments and don the coarse attire of a servant. "Thou shalt ride, my sorry hack," quoth she, "and I upon Falada." And the poor princess dared not resist, for the woman threatened her life if she disobeyed. Thus the maid who was born to sit on a throne was forced to ride a sorry jade and trail behind, while her own waiting woman rode proudly before on Falada. Yet the horse, though dumb now in body, kept all things in his heart. So they came at last to the king's castle. Great was the joy of the prince at his bride's arrival. He hastened to greet her, lifted her down from Falada, and led her by the hand up the steps, believing the waiting woman to be the princess. Meanwhile, the true bride lingered in the courtyard, her eyes cast low. The old king, looking from a high window, spied her and wondered at her gentle bearing. He went down and asked the false bride who the fair maid might be. "Only a servant I brought for company," answered she lightly. "Give her some task that she may not idle." So the old king bethought him of a goose boy named Conrad, and he bade that the strange maiden keep the geese with him. Thus was the true princess set to guard geese in the meadow, while her servant wore crown and jewels in her stead. Now, the false bride, fearing Falada might speak of what had passed, besought the young prince to slay him, saying he had troubled her sore upon the journey. The order was given, and the faithful steed was doomed. When tidings reached the Goose Girl, she bribed the knacker with a piece of gold, entreating him to nail Falada's head beneath the dark gate where she must pass each morn and eve. This the man did, and thenceforth the maiden, leading her geese through the gate, would cry, "Falada, hanging there." And the head replied, "Princess, dost thou fare so ill? If thy mother knew thy grief, her heart would surely break in brief." Then she went forth with her flock to the meadows. There she loosed her golden hair, which shone like sunlight upon water. Conrad, her companion, longed to pluck a few strands, but she called upon the wind, "O wind, blow Conrad's hat away, and chase it far o'er field and clay, while I my golden hair unbind, and braid it up in seemly kind." At once the wind sprang up, whirled Conrad's hat far across the meadow, and while he ran after it, she combed and bound her shining locks. Thus it happened, day by day, till Conrad, angered, went to the old king and complained that he could herd geese no longer with the strange maid. He told of the speaking head at the gate, and of the golden hair, and how the wind ever played him false. The king, curious, hid himself next morning by the gate, and then in the meadow, and he saw all with his own eyes. That evening he called the maiden and questioned her gently, but she dared reveal nothing, for she had sworn an oath under peril of her life. At last the king bade her whisper her sorrow into the iron oven. There she crept, weeping, and poured forth her tale, how she was a king's daughter, how the waiting woman had betrayed her, how she was forced to keep geese, while another sat in her rightful place. The king, who stood without, heard every word. Straightway he drew her forth, clothed her in royal raiment, and her beauty shone brighter than before. He summoned his son and revealed the truth. The bride he had cherished was but a false servant, and the true princess stood before him. Great was the prince's joy, and a feast was proclaimed. At the banquet, the false bride sat beside the prince. The true bride opposite, gleaming in her new array. The old king set forth the tale, asking the false bride what punishment such treachery deserved. Thinking not of herself, she cried, "Let the guilty wretch be thrust naked into a barrel, set with sharp nails, and dragged by 2 white steeds until she is dead." The old king rose and said sternly, "Thou hast spoken thine own doom, so let it be." And thus was judgment fulfilled. Thereafter, the prince wedded the true bride with great rejoicing, and together they ruled long years in peace and happiness, while the tale of the Goose Girl was told and retold, a warning against treachery and a comfort to the faithful in heart. The golden bird, in days long forgotten, when kings still ruled in pride from high castles of stone, there lived a sovereign whose greatest treasure was not crown nor jewel, but a wondrous tree that grew in the hidden garden behind his halls. Upon its branches ripened apples of purest gold, glowing in the moonlight, like suns caught in the boughs. These apples were counted daily, for the king guarded them as the heart of his wealth. Yet one morning, when the dew still clung to the grass, a servant discovered that a single golden apple had vanished. Fury burned in the king's breast. He swore aloud that no thief should mock his majesty unpunished, and he commanded that each night a watch be set by the tree until the culprit was caught. The king had 3 sons, and to the eldest the duty first fell. Boldly did the young man swear he would not sleep, but would guard the garden with bow in hand. He watched until midnight, but then weariness stole upon him like a heavy fog. His lids closed, his head drooped, and by dawn another apple was gone. The second son took his place the following night, boasting that he would not fail as his brother had. Yet when the clock struck 12, he too was overcome. And by morning, the golden harvest was the poorer still. At last came the turn of the youngest. But the king trusted him least of all, for he was thought simple and slow of wit. He will do worse than the others, the king said. But in the end, he consented. So the lad laid himself under the tree, resolved with a stout heart that sleep should not conquer him. When the hour of midnight struck, the garden grew suddenly bright with moonlight. and through the still air came a rushing sound. Down from the heavens flew a bird, whose feathers shone like molten gold. It perched upon the tree and bent its beak to seize a glowing apple. The young prince, quick as a flash, loosed an arrow. The shaft struck true, yet only a feather fell. The bird escaped, leaving the branch lighter by one fruit. The prince lifted the fallen feather, which glimmered in his hand, brighter than all the king's jewels. At dawn, he bore it before his father and told what had passed. The king gathered his council, and the wise men declared that a single such feather was worth more than all the kingdom's treasure. Then, one feather shall not satisfy me, said the king. I must have the bird itself, though I give half my realm to gain it. So the eldest son set forth in quest of the golden bird. Trusting in his own cleverness, he journeyed far until he came to the edge of a wood. There sat a fox whose eyes gleamed like coals. The prince raised his musket to fire, but the fox cried, "Spare me, and I shall give thee counsel. Tonight thou wilt reach a village where two inns stand opposite. In one there shall be music, wine, and laughter. In the other, silence and gloom. Choose the darker place, and thy fortune shall prosper." But the proud youth scoffed. "Shall a ragged beast school me?" he said, and pulled the trigger. The ball flew wide, and the fox vanished into the thicket. At nightfall, the prince entered the village and beheld the two inns. From one rang merriment, the other looked fit for beggars only. Only a fool would choose misery over mirth, said he, and went into the bright hall. There he feasted, forgetting both bird and king. When months passed, and he did not return, the second son begged leave to seek the bird. He too met the fox, heard the same counsel, and likewise despised it. At the village, he spied his elder brother, calling from the merry tavern's window. Lured by laughter and song, he joined him, and so the second son was lost as well. At last, the youngest pleaded that he might try his fortune. The king, fearing to lose him too, refused. "Thou art foolish and weak," said he. "If thy brothers failed, thou wilt perish." Yet the boy begged without ceasing until the king wearied. Let him go. He too found the fox by the forest's edge. "Do me no harm," said the beast, "and I shall guide thee truly." The youth, being gentle, lowered his bow. "Fear nothing, little fox. I shall not hurt thee." "Good," said the fox, "for thou shalt not repent it. Mount upon my tail, and I will bear thee swifter than horse or stag." So the prince clung fast, and the fox sped over hill and stone, the wind whistling past his ears. At the village, he obeyed the fox's word, entered the shabby inn, and passed a night in peace. In the morning, the fox awaited him. "Now mark me well. Before thee lies a castle where the golden bird is kept. Around it sleep soldiers in deep enchantment. Pass among them boldly, they will not stir. Within thou shalt find the bird in a wooden cage, and beside it a cage of gold. Touch not the gilded one, else misfortune will befall." Once more the fox offered his tail, and once more they flew like storm winds until they reached the castle. All was as foretold. Soldiers snored upon the ground, and within the hall hung the golden bird in its rude cage, the 3 stolen apples beside it. But the prince, pitying the noble creature in its mean prison, thought shame that so fair a bird should not rest in gold. He placed it in the splendid cage, whereupon the bird cried out piercingly. The soldiers awoke, and the prince was taken and cast into a dungeon. At dawn he was judged and condemned, yet the king spared him. On one condition: he must bring the golden horse swifter than the wind itself. If he succeeded, both horse and bird should be his. So the youth went forth sorrowing. But once again the fox appeared. "See, now," said he, "all this ill came because thou wouldst not heed my word. Yet I pity thee still. The horse thou seekest stands in a stable, guarded by sleeping grooms. Lead him out with the plain saddle of wood and leather. Beware the golden one that hangs beside, else thou art lost." Everything befell as the fox foretold yet again. Folly tempted the prince. "How can I set a base saddle on so glorious a beast?" thought he, and he laid hand on the golden one. Instantly the horse neighed loud, the grooms awoke, and the prince was again seized and condemned. Yet the king spared him once more, on condition that he bring the princess of the golden castle. With heavy heart he set out. Again the fox guided him. At night the princess goes to bathe. Kiss her as she enters, and she will follow. But suffer her not to bid farewell to her parents, or all is lost. All came to pass as foretold. The princess wept and begged leave to speak to her father. The prince, overcome by her tears, relented. At once the castle awoke, he was taken, and a third time condemned. This time the king demanded that he level a mountain within 8 days. On the 7th night, the fox returned. Lie down and sleep. I shall do the work. At dawn, the mountain was gone, and the king, bound by his word, yielded the princess. Thereafter, with Fox's counsel, the prince, by cunning, gained the golden horse and the golden bird as well. Yet when he asked what reward the fox desired, the beast said, "When next we meet in the wood, strike off my head and feet, else I shall know no rest." The prince refused, and the fox departed. In time, he came to the place where his brothers, worthless and wicked, were to be hanged. He bought their freedom, though warned not to spend coin on gallows meat. Later, resting by a brook, he forgot the fox's warning again. The brothers betrayed him, cast him into the water, and stole bird horse and princess for themselves. Yet the brook was dry, and the faithful fox drew him forth once more, disguised as a beggar. He returned to the king's hall, where the bird sang the horse fed, and the princess ceased her weeping. She knew her true love, and the treachery of the brothers was revealed. They were hanged in his stead, and the youngest prince wedded the princess. Only the fox's fate remained. Long afterward, the fox met him once more and pleaded with tears, "Now thou hast all thy heart desired. Free me from my curse. Strike off my head and feet." At last, the prince obeyed. In that instant, the fox was transformed into a man, none other than the princess's long-lost brother, bewitched by evil sorcery. So all was well. The kingdom prospered. The bird sang in its golden cage. The horse flew swifter than the wind, and joy dwelt in their halls as long as they lived. Puss in Boots. There was once a miller who possessed but little in this world: a grinding mill, a sturdy donkey, and a tomcat with sharp teeth and quick eyes. He had also 3 sons, and while he lived, they toiled together. The eldest labored at the grinding stone. The second loaded grain upon the donkey, and bore away the flour. And the third saw that the mice did not steal from the sacks. Now when the miller died, the sons gathered to divide the poor inheritance. The eldest took the mill, for it was the strongest of the possessions. The second received the donkey, which could carry him on its back. And to the youngest was left nothing but the cat. When he saw his share, the lad grew heavy of heart and murmured to himself, "Woe is me! I am the most unfortunate of brothers. The eldest has the mill and can grind his bread forever. The second has a beast to carry him and fetch his goods. But I, what am I to do with a mere tomcat? Better, I should kill him, take his skin, and fashion a pair of fur gloves, than to keep such a burden alive." But the cat, who had been listening all the while, leapt upon the bench and spoke in a clear voice. "Slay me not, young master, for my pelt will give you nothing but shabby gloves, fit only to let the rain through. Give me instead a pair of stout boots, that I may stride like men, and be seen among them, and you shall soon find my worth. I promise you help beyond your hoping." The lad marveled that a cat should speak thus, yet at that very hour a shoemaker passed by the door. The son called him in, and though it cost him the last of his coins, he had a pair of neat boots measured for the tom. When the boots were made, the cat drew them on with great pride, slung a sack across his shoulders, filled the bottom with corn, tied the mouth with a cord, and walked out upon 2 legs, as sprightly as any gentleman. In those days, a king ruled the land who loved partridges above all meats. Yet though the forests teemed with them, no hunter could catch the shy birds. The cat knew this well, and contrived a cunning plan. Deep into the wood he went, scattered corn upon the ground, laid open his sack, and drew the cord long into the grass, hiding himself behind a hedge. The partridges, greedy for the grain, fluttered down and hopped one by one into the bag. When a good number were trapped, the cat pulled tight. The cord twisted their necks and bore them straightway to the king's palace. At the gate, the guards laughed. "Hold, where goes a cat with a sack?" To the king answered the cat. "A king has no time for cats," scoffed one. But another said, "Let him through." The king often seeks amusement. Perhaps this creature will give him sport. So the cat entered the hall, bowed low, and said with courtesy, "My noble lord, the Graf here, He spoke a long, grand name he had invented, sends to your majesty these partridges taken in his snares. The king, astonished at the fatness of the birds, clapped his hands for joy. He bade that gold be poured into the sack, so much as the cat could carry, and sent him off with thanks to his master. Meanwhile, the poor miller's son sat sorrowful at his window, thinking he had wasted his last coin on a pair of boots. But when the cat returned and spilled the glittering gold upon the floor, saying, "Here is payment for my boots," and greeting from the king, the youth could scarce believe his eyes. And the cat told him all that had passed, adding, "Be of good cheer. This is but the beginning. I have spoken of you as a noble graf, and the king believes it. Tomorrow I shall hunt again, and we shall grow richer still." Thus it came to pass. Day after day, the booted cat brought treasures and partridges to the king, who grew so fond of him that he allowed him free passage in and out of the palace. Now one day, as the cat warmed himself by the kitchen fire, he overheard the coachman mutter angrily, "A curse upon the king and the princess." 2. I had thought to drink and play cards at the inn, yet must I drive them idling by the lake. At once the cat sped home and said to his master, "If you would truly be a graf and win wealth, besides go with me to the lake and bathe yourself there." The youth, though puzzled, obeyed. He stripped bare and leapt into the water. Then the cat seized his clothes and hid them in the reeds. Soon the royal carriage came rolling by, and the cat cried aloud, "Help! Help! Most gracious king! My lord the graf was bathing in the lake when a thief stole his garments. Now he cannot come forth, and if he lingers longer, he will perish of cold." The king, remembering the many gifts of partridges, ordered fine robes from his own wardrobe to be brought, and bade the graf sit beside him in the carriage. The princess looked kindly upon him, for the young man was handsome, and her heart was not displeased. Meanwhile, the cat ran ahead. He came first to a great meadow where 100 haymakers worked. "Whose meadow is this?" he asked. "The magicians," said they. "Hear me," warned the cat. "The king will soon pass by. When he asks whose land this is, answer, 'The graf's.' If you say otherwise, you shall all be struck dead." So it went also with a vast cornfield where 200 reapers labored, and with a mighty forest where 300 woodcutters felled oak. To each the cat gave the same command, and the workers, frightened by his boots and bold words, did as he bade. At last the cat came to the magician's palace itself. He strode inside and bowed. The magician sneered. "What seek you, little cat in boots? I have heard," said the cat, "that you can turn yourself into any creature, that you can be a hound, a fox, even a wolf, I might believe, but an elephant that I doubt." The magician, proud of his power, transformed at once into an elephant. "Marvelous," cried the cat. "And into a lion too." With a roar, the magician became a lion. The cat feigned terror, unheard of. Yet the greatest wonder would be if you could change into something small, a creature no bigger than a mouse. Surely that is beyond even you. The magician, eager to boast, shrank into a mouse and scampered across the floor. In an instant, the cat sprang, caught him, and swallowed him down. When the king's carriage rolled up to the palace, the cat stood proudly at the door. "Welcome, O king," he cried, "to the castle of my master, the noble Graf." The king marveled at the splendid halls, richer even than his own. The princess gave her hand to the youth, and before long she was promised to him in marriage. In time, when the old king died, the miller's son became king in his stead. And as for the clever tomcat, he was raised to high honor and served as the first minister of the realm.